Pam, Lou Brutus, always great to speak to Sam Carter of Architects. First, congratulations on Those That Wish to Exist at Abbey Road, because it's an amazing sounding record. You and I have spoken extensively about the Abbey Road studios, but I would be very curious to hear about the particular logistics about putting this event together, because I can't think that getting Abbey Road and filling it with top flight musicians is a very easy or inexpensive thing to do.
Well, yeah, it was crazy. I think the idea, I mean, like initially coming up with the idea as well, something that I spoke to Dan about when we were there doing, I think we were doing like a Q&A there, like maybe for the album, we did like a sit down talk with our friend Daniel P. Carter, and we went through sort of an in-depth chat about it. And then at the end of that, we'd just done the stream at Royal Albert Hall, and we were still, it was still like lockdown over here, so we were still trying to think of other ways to sort of get this album out there, because normally touring heavily is how we would do that. And I came up with the idea and said to Dan, how amazing it would be to be in the large studio, because everything else we'd done had been in Studio 2, which is a dream for me, because that's the Beatles room. But I know a lot of impressive string arrangements and some Beatles string arrangements were recorded in there as well, in the bigger room. So yeah, to get in there and actually play as a band and perform with these incredible musicians was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And yeah, it was tricky actually, because of the restrictions throughout lockdown. There was like a certain amount of people that were allowed in the room. So initially we considered having a choir in there as well, but that wasn't going to be able to work, because we would have had to have cut so much back from the orchestra, and that was the main point of it, which made me have to really go to work for the day, which was great. I didn't have a choir backing me up. But yeah, it was amazing to see it go from this little idea to getting it to there, and the orchestra that we worked with, the Parallax Orchestra, and Simon the composer was amazing. And yeah, it was just it felt really cool. And actually, I think the weird thing was we'd spent so much time in like isolation, and I think at that point you were allowed to go out in groups of 6, or you were like, if you were in a restaurant or a pub, you could be in groups of 6. And that still felt like quite intimidating, because we'd spent so much time not doing that. To then be planted in the middle of a room with like 50 people playing these songs like amazingly, and then us just being in the middle, it was really surreal. It just felt like a bit of a sort of like a fever dream, of like how did I go from like not being allowed in a pub with all my friends to playing at Abbey Road in this room that I've always wanted to be in with an incredible orchestra. It was a proper pinch yourself moment.
Not that I'm going to ask for receipts or anything, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how expensive is it to get an orchestra in Abbey Road?
It's not the cheapest thing you can do, but I think it again it pays for itself. The opportunity and being able to sort of have that on your CV and say that you've done that is really cool. And I think when we didn't really do it to make a load of money. I think we just kind of did it to sort of get that out there and not lose money on it. And again, it was amazing to sort of see the stream around the world and have people engage with us at a time when things were a little bit strange. But actually, when the stream came out, it was more like people were sort of free to be out around England. But yeah, it's amazing to see the record selling, and vinyl is something that I'm really passionate about and love, and to see that go as well, and see people holding it and loving it. Anything that has the words Abbey Road and Architects next to each other is a win for me.
Well, I can't help but notice you're wearing a Beatles sweatshirt too, so I know you've been a fan for all our conversations.
This is like my my uniform. My uniform is normally something from the 70s or 80s, Beatles related, and I spend most of my time sort of looking through the deep dark depths of the internet to try and find like, oh, this was released in 1972, and you got to get it. And like my room upstairs is my little office is like a Beatles shrine of like museum memorabilia and stuff. So I'm sure, hopefully there's a lot more to come.
If you ever get a chance, talk about the Beatles with Taylor Momsen from the Pretty Reckless. She is.
I think I remember you saying that before. I remember you saying that last time.
She's a degenerate Beatles fan, and I've gotten her a bunch of bootleg stuff. I think I still need to dig out all of that. I've got the complete Revolver sessions, and dear God, it's like 6 or 8 hours worth of, if you want to hear 38 takes of John, I'm Only Sleeping,
Yeah, that's the dream. That's when. Yeah, it's when the Disney film came out. It was like every like few months it was getting pushed back even more and more and more. Peter Jackson was doing all the press saying how amazing it was and all this footage that he'd unearthed, and it was getting pushed back. Every time it got pushed back, I was like, please, we've waited so long, just give me this. And it was amazing when it came out. I watched it because they did it over the 3 days of the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I watched every single one every day it came out, and I was lucky enough to go and see it in IMAX when they did the rooftop show in IMAX in the UK, and I went to go and see that, and I've seen it at another cinema as well. And it's such a big part of my life, really. I think in a weird way, I don't think I'd be the musician I am without it, especially not sort of that drive of constantly trying to create and be a better musician, I think. Because they're just, they didn't have a lot, and they did a lot with what they had. I think in terms of like production and the way that their songs sounded and the way that they wrote their songs, it's just it's amazing. It's amazing what they did with 4 lads in a room playing live.
Would you ever be tempted to try and go back and use what now seem like fairly crude techniques to make a record? Would you ever want to use vintage recording techniques and vintage recording equipment and maybe even vintage instrumentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're always kind of doing these things when we're writing and recording records, where we're either sort of pushing into this really electronic world with like old synths, or whether we're moving into like different types of percussion. And I think I'd like to see the band eventually end up doing something like that. I think for now, I think where we're at in sort of blending in the two and trying to be as like honest as we can, I think it makes sense to sort of stick where we are. But I think eventually going down the line, I would love to do that. I mean, we did an album called the Here and Now like a long time ago. That was like our 3rd or 4th record, and that entire record was there was no edits, no replacements, and no auto tune, no tricks. We did it with Steve Evans, and we were like, I think I was 19 or 20 at the time, and we did the entire thing with no edits, no tracks, no nothing. Everything that was on there was all of us, and it was a really amazing experience, very humbling. It makes you be like, I really got to get my shit together. But it made us better musicians, I think, especially for that touring cycle and that sort of, being like that was cool.
Is there anybody in Architects who's sort of the retro gear guy? For example, I've been friends with Roy Mayorga for many, many years, who plays in Ministry now and with Stone Sour, and he's a producer and composer. His home is like a museum of ancient electronics and old Moogs, and he can take the stuff apart and put it together. Is there anybody in Architects who is sort of that guy?
I think everyone's got a little bit of nerd in them. I think Josh has got a lot of gear. He's a really good musician. He's got a lot of guitars on and knows everything to the faintest little sound of what's wrong or what's right. I think Dan's a great producer as well. He's really started getting into that. Ali's always pushing the envelope with especially in the world of like synth basses and what we can do there. I think a lot of people would be surprised actually when they hear records to know that everything that's on there is the majority of the time there's somebody playing them, and it's been rewired through God knows what to get it to sound like it, but it's they're proper takes, and I really like that. I mean, I think there's room for everything. I think there's rooms for just writing something on a laptop, but I think that's amazing, especially for younger musicians. But I think actually being sat in a room, sometimes it's the parts write themselves when you put that time in, because it opens doors when you sit there and you hear this sound, and you're like, whoa, okay, right, maybe we should change this note here and here. And I think that's part of the excitement when we all get in the studio together, is that sort of experimentation of, oh, okay, like, cool, let's try this while we're here, and like maybe this will work and maybe it won't. But yeah, I think, yeah, we're all a little bit gear nerdy.
Back to the performance at Abbey Road. Now, with all of these classical musicians, one would assume that these are super pros in London. They can read and perform anything on site off the sheet music.
Yeah.
With that as a given, how much rehearsal time did you get before it was actually go time?
We had a couple of days. We had personally a couple of days just in our studio in Brighton, I think, before we did everything, without the orchestra, just to make sure that we're playing everything through properly. Some of the orchestra have been with us since Holy Hell, and they have been involved in sort of everything that we've done recording. But there was definitely a lot of people in that room that had either A, never heard of us before, or B, were none the wiser of what we were doing. But what's amazing is, I mean, we watched them turn up in the morning, and we were there for their run through. The day before, we were there for their run through, and just seeing these musicians just immediately get it. It's something to really behold when you see someone literally turning a page and then playing your songs absolutely perfectly and completely in time with each other. And it was just staggering to sort of sit on this giant ledge and watch them recording. And yeah, I'm constantly amazed by classical musicians, and yeah, they really gave it some, especially with Simon, the composer. He really gave it some.
Well, I can't wait to see you guys in the flesh. And yeah, I feel in my gut that maybe it's all finally going to be in the rear view, and hopefully the world doesn't fall apart in other ways in between now and then. But
we can hope, we can pray.
Yeah, hope
Yeah.
springs eternal.